Atlanta child murders. In the upcoming chapter, on a cold December night in 1979, the city of Atlanta was shaken to its core. A young boy named Edward Hope Smith vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a growing sense of fear. This disappearance marked the beginning of one of the most chilling chapters in American history, the Atlanta child murders. Imagine this. Over 2 years, nearly 30 children, teenagers, and young adults would meet tragic ends under mysterious circumstances. Their bodies were found strangled, dumped in remote locations around the city. It was as if an invisible predator had taken root in the heart of Atlanta, striking at will and leaving no clear evidence behind. Before I dive in, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it there for you? I love knowing who's out there with me and where in the world you're tuning in from. Whether you're starting your day, winding down at night, or somewhere in between, I want to know what your moment looks like. It's also a great way for me to get to know you better and maybe even shape future content around your schedules. So go ahead, drop a comment below and let me know where you are today. I'm all ears. Atlanta, in the late 70s and early 80s, was a vibrant city full of promise. But beneath the surface lay simmering tensions fueled by racial inequality and economic disparity. The victims came mostly from marginalized communities, African American families struggling to make ends meet in neighborhoods that felt forgotten by the rest of society. For many, these murders weren't just crimes. They were a reflection of deeper societal issues long ignored. At first, no one suspected anything more than isolated incidents. But as the body count rose, so did panic among residents. Parents kept their kids indoors after dark, and curfews were enforced across certain areas of the city. Yet, nothing seemed to stop the killer or killers, who continued to prey on innocent lives. The first victim, Edward Hope Smith, was last seen walking home from his grandmother's house. His disappearance sparked initial concern, but when he failed to return, police launched a search that yielded nothing. Days turned into weeks, and eventually, hope faded. Then came the second victim, Timothy Hill, followed by the third, Kevin Wade Buckner. Each case mirrored the last strangulation, no signs of struggle, and bodies left in secluded spots. By 1981, the toll reached almost 30 individuals, ranging from ages 6 to 28. As investigators scrambled to piece together clues, public outrage mounted. Community meetings drew crowds demanding answers, while local media outlets painted a grim picture of fear gripping the city. Among those searching for answers was Detective Emily Carter, a seasoned investigator whose curiosity set her on a decade-long journey to uncover the truth. During one of her visits to an archive at Morehouse College, she stumbled upon letters written by Wayne Williams, the man later convicted of 2 murders linked to the spree. These documents offered unprecedented insight into his thought process. How could someone so ordinary commit such atrocities? She wondered aloud during her first visit to the archive. Her question ignited a quest to understand not just the mind of the perpetrator, but also the societal factors that allowed him to operate undetected for so long. By 2005, advancements in forensic technology provided new tools for analyzing evidence collected during the original investigation. Detective Mark Thompson, who worked tirelessly on the case throughout the 1980s, revisited old files using DNA testing capabilities unavailable at the time of the original inquiry. One breakthrough involved matching biological material found on several victims to Wayne Williams' profile, confirming connections previously unrecognized. Could there be even more victims than we originally thought? Asked Mark during a press conference, his voice filled with both hope and dread. Meanwhile, Emily delved deeper into psychological aspects of Williams's personality. Studying interviews conducted with him during his imprisonment, she noted how effortlessly he manipulated both captors and psychologists alike. During one particularly haunting exchange, Williams described killing as an act of liberation, a concept so foreign it defied comprehension. "He didn't seem human," Emily confessed during a lecture at Georgia State University. "It was like talking to something else entirely." But here's where things take a darker turn. Despite Wayne Williams being convicted of 2 murders tied to the spree, doubts lingered about whether he acted alone or if others might have been involved. In 2013, a former neighbor came forward claiming to recall suspicious activity near the homes of some victims days before their deaths. Though vague, these recollections sparked new lines of inquiry. Detectives revisited old statements, searching for overlooked details that might connect dots unseen before. "Every little piece matters," insisted Mark during another late-night session, reviewing files stacked high around his desk. In 2020, social media platforms played increasingly vital roles in disseminating information related to the case. A Facebook group dedicated to discussing potential leads attracted thousands of members worldwide. Conversations ranged from speculative musings to well-researched arguments supported by data. One member, Brian Carter, gained prominence when he identified similarities between the Atlanta child murders and other unsolved killings across the southeastern United States during the same period. His findings prompted authorities to explore connections dismissed as coincidental decades earlier. Are we looking at copycat crimes or part of something larger? Brian asked during a live Q&A session, drawing nods of agreement from participants. Then, in 2022, a groundbreaking discovery emerged when forensic genealogy techniques identified relatives linked to DNA profiles discovered at various crime scenes associated with Williams. Investigators traced these connections back to individuals living near areas where Williams operated during his active years. While circumstantial, the findings generated renewed energy within ongoing investigations. "We're closer than ever before," declared Mark Thompson, now in his 70s, but unwilling to retire without closure. Cameras flashed as reporters clamored for answers, underscoring the significance of this development. Yet, despite these advances, fundamental questions remain unanswered. Who wrote the cryptic ransom notes sent to some families? Why stage such complex scenarios if intent wasn't robbery? And perhaps most hauntingly, what role, if any, did broader criminal networks play in these murders? These mysteries weigh heavily on those closest to the case. Mark finds himself haunted by dreams of shadowy figures whispering riddles he cannot solve. Linda Hayes, a journalist covering the story since its inception, spends sleepless nights researching obscure archives, searching for patterns others might have missed. Even casual observers feel drawn into the vortex of uncertainty surrounding this infamous tragedy. Fast forward to 2023, and the story takes yet another twist. Researchers announce they have decoded messages embedded in artwork created by Wayne Williams during his incarceration. Using sophisticated image recognition software, analysts identified recurring themes tied to specific locations and dates corresponding to known crimes. This revelation suggests Williams may have left deliberate clues intended to taunt authorities even beyond the grave. Was he playing games right up until the end? Asks Emily Carter during a private meeting with colleagues. Her voice cracks slightly, betraying exhaustion mixed with awe at the complexity of their subject. At the same time, advancements in artificial intelligence offer unprecedented opportunities for analyzing large datasets related to the case. A program developed by Brian Carter sifts through thousands of pages of archived material, flagging patterns previously overlooked by human eyes. His findings suggest possible ties between Williams's actions and broader criminal networks operating throughout Georgia during the 1970s and 1980s. Are we looking at isolated incidents or part of something far greater? Brian asks during a live discussion, drawing murmurs of agreement from participants. The atmosphere shifts dramatically as public interest in the case grows once again. Social media buzzes with theories, some credible, others far-fetched, but all contributing to a global conversation about justice and accountability. Families affected by similar losses gather annually to honor their loved ones, finding solace in shared memories and unwavering determination. "We won't stop fighting," says Linda Hayes during a memorial service held near Atlanta. Her voice cracking with emotion, underscoring the personal stakes involved. And so, the legend of the Atlanta child murders persists not merely as a relic of the past, but as a testament to human resilience in the face of incomprehensible evil. For every answer uncovered, new questions arise. For every step forward, obstacles loom large. Through it all, one truth remains clear. The quest for understanding transcends generations, binding us together in our shared desire for peace and resolution. Now, here's the kicker. What if Wayne Williams wasn't acting alone? Recent revelations point toward organized crime involvement, suggesting a conspiracy much bigger than anyone initially imagined. Could the mafia have played a role? Or was this the work of a lone individual consumed by darkness? As researchers dig deeper into Williams' background, startling connections emerge linking him to other unsolved cases across the region. Some theorize that the true number of victims could exceed the official count of 29. Others believe additional perpetrators may still be at large. What do you think happened in Atlanta all those years ago? Let me know in the comments below. Did Wayne Williams act alone, or were others involved? Your input shapes the stories I share next, so don't hesitate to join the conversation. Remember, the truth is out there. It's just waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it. The Board Up Zach. In the upcoming chapter, it was a quiet night in Sacramento, California, when the first chilling whispers of terror began to spread through the community. A shadowy figure moved silently under the cover of darkness, leaving behind a trail of unspeakable acts that would haunt the state for decades. Imagine this: a predator who struck not once, not twice, but over and over again, leaving victims traumatized and authorities baffled. This wasn't just any criminal, this was someone who seemed to vanish into thin air after each attack, leaving no trace except for fragments of fear scattered across multiple cities. Before I dive in, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it there for you? I love knowing who's out there with me and where in the world you're tuning in from. Whether you're starting your day, winding down at night, or somewhere in between, I want to know what your moment looks like. It's also a great way for me to get to know you better and maybe even shape future content around your schedules. So go ahead, drop a comment below and let me know where you are today. I'm all ears. The year was 1976 when the first reports emerged of a brutal intruder breaking into homes during the dead of night. The East Area Rapist, as he came to be known, targeted women in their own beds, using violence and intimidation to silence them. Over the next decade, his crimes escalated beyond sexual assaults to include cold-blooded murder. By the early 1980s, he had expanded his territory, moving south to Orange County and leaving a trail of death and destruction in his wake. For years, law enforcement struggled to piece together the puzzle of who or what this monster could be. In the small town of Rancho Cordova, nestled near Sacramento, residents lived in constant dread. Families bolted their doors shut, installed security systems, and avoided walking alone after sunset. Yet nothing stopped the predator from striking again and again. Each crime left investigators scratching their heads, searching for connections between seemingly unrelated cases. Was this one man or an organized group? And why did he always manage to slip through the cracks? As we fast forward to the early 2000s, the case remained wide open, frustrating detectives and tormenting families still seeking closure. Forensic psychologist Emily Carter found herself drawn to the mystery after uncovering long-forgotten letters written by survivors recounting their harrowing experiences. She pored over these documents late into the night, her mind racing with questions. How could someone commit such heinous acts repeatedly without being caught? What drove this person to prey on innocent lives so mercilessly? By 2005, advancements in forensic technology offered new hope for solving the decades-old mystery. Detective Mark Thompson, who had spent much of his career chasing leads on the case, revisited old evidence with fresh eyes. Using DNA testing capabilities unavailable at the time of the attacks, investigators began matching biological material found at various crime scenes. One breakthrough involved linking semen samples collected from multiple victims to a single unknown male profile. Not someone previously considered a suspect, but someone entirely different. Could this finally be the key they needed? But the story doesn't end there. As years passed, public fascination with the case only grew stronger. True crime podcasts, documentaries, and online forums buzzed with theories about the identity of the Golden State Killer. Among those captivated by the case was Brian Carter, a computer programmer turned self-taught cryptographer. He applied advanced algorithms to decode patterns hidden within DNA databases, hoping to uncover clues missed by professionals. His work attracted national attention, sparking debates about whether amateurs could truly solve mysteries law enforcement couldn't crack. Meanwhile, Emily delved deeper into the psychological makeup of the attacker. Studying interviews conducted with victims revealed a haunting truth. Many described feeling as though the rapist enjoyed exerting control over them. It wasn't just about sex, it was about power. This revelation shook Emily to her core, making her question if any degree of understanding could explain such evil. How do you study something so monstrous without letting it consume you? She wondered aloud during a rare moment of reflection. Then came the turning point in 2018, a year that changed everything. Investigators turned to forensic genealogy, a cutting-edge technique that cross-references DNA samples against publicly available genetic databases. Following this lead, they identified a distant relative linked to the unknown male profile discovered years earlier. Tracing connections back through family trees led them straight to Joseph James DeAngelo, a former police officer living quietly in Citrus Heights, California. On April 24, 2018, detectives arrested DeAngelo after confirming through additional DNA tests that he matched the profile left at numerous crime scenes. The announcement sent shockwaves across the nation. Here was a man who had once sworn to protect and serve, now revealed as one of America's most infamous serial killers. During his trial, witnesses recounted chilling encounters, while forensic experts provided damning evidence linking him to more than 50 rapes and 13 murders spanning over a decade. Despite his calm demeanor in court, DeAngelo's actions spoke volumes of a twisted mind obsessed with domination and destruction. After days of deliberation, the jury delivered a verdict: guilty on all counts. Justice may have been served, but the story didn't stop there. Inside Joseph James DeAngelo's prison cell, analysts uncovered artwork created during his incarceration. Using sophisticated image recognition software, they decoded recurring themes tied to specific locations and dates corresponding to known crimes. These messages suggested that DeAngelo might have left deliberate clues intended to taunt authorities even beyond the grave. Was he playing games right up until the end? Or were these final acts of defiance meant to confuse and confound forever? At the same time, advancements in artificial intelligence opened unprecedented opportunities for analyzing large datasets related to the case. A program developed by Brian Carter sifted through thousands of pages of archived material, flagging patterns previously overlooked by human eyes. His findings hinted at possible ties between DeAngelo's actions and broader criminal networks operating throughout California during the 1970s and 1980s. Were these isolated incidents or part of something far larger? The atmosphere shifted dramatically as public interest in the case surged once again. Social media platforms buzzed with theories, some credible, others far-fetched, yet all contributing to a global conversation about justice and accountability. Families affected by similar losses gathered annually to honor their loved ones, finding solace in shared memories and unwavering determination. "We won't stop fighting," said Linda Hayes during a memorial service held near Sacramento, her voice cracking with emotion, underscoring the personal stakes involved. Despite the arrest and conviction, fundamental questions remain unanswered. What exactly caused Joseph James DeAngelo to become who he was? Can anyone fully comprehend the depths of such depravity? Psychologists have debated these issues for years, examining factors ranging from childhood trauma to societal influences. But perhaps the most haunting question of all is whether true evil can ever truly be understood, or will it always lurk just beyond our grasp? Let's take a step back and revisit the beginning. Picture this: a suburban neighborhood bathed in moonlight, where shadows stretch long and every creak of the floorboards echoes like a warning. Somewhere among these streets, a predator stalked his prey, methodically planning each move before striking without mercy. Residents went to bed feeling safe, only to awaken to horror unimaginable. How does someone fall so far into madness that they see nothing wrong with destroying lives so casually? For every answer uncovered, new mysteries arise. Did DeAngelo act alone, or did others participate in his crimes? Could there be more victims than originally thought? Advances in forensic science continue to unravel secrets buried deep within archives, offering tantalizing possibilities worth pursuing. In 2023, researchers announced another startling discovery. Traces of handwritten notes found at several crime scenes contained cryptic symbols resembling codes used by military personnel. Could DeAngelo's background as a policeman and Vietnam War veteran provide insight into his methods or mask darker truths waiting to surface? Technology evolves at breakneck speed, offering tools once thought impossible. Yet challenges persist. Forensic experts warn against over-reliance on machines, emphasizing the importance of human intuition in solving complex cases. Psychologists study behavioral patterns exhibited by perpetrators, hoping to identify warning signs before tragedies occur. Ordinary citizens grapple with difficult questions about safety, trust, and accountability in their communities. How close do monsters live to us, and how easily can we miss the signs? As we reflect on this harrowing tale, one thing becomes clear. Evil exists in many forms, often hiding in plain sight. But so does resilience. Despite the horrors endured, the people of California continued to rebuild, finding light in the darkest corners. Support groups formed by family members of victims offer comfort and strength, reminding everyone that love can conquer fear. Memorials stand proudly, honoring those lost and inspiring future generations to learn from past mistakes. Do you believe the case will ever be fully solved? Or does its identity remain forever shrouded in darkness? As we ponder these questions, let us remember the lives touched and tragically ended by this horrific series of crimes. Because only by honoring their memory can we hope to move forward, armed with knowledge and fortified by compassion. Or will the shadows always hold sway, reminding us of the limits of human understanding? What do you think happened here? Let me know in the comments below. Do you agree with the theories presented? Or do you have your own ideas about what drove DeAngelo to commit such atrocities? Your input matters, and it shapes the stories I share next. So go ahead, type it out, and hit send. I'll see you there. The Cornfield Whispers. It was one of those evenings where the world seemed to pause, as though nature itself was holding its breath. The cornfields stretched endlessly an ocean of golden stalks swaying gently under a sky painted with the colors of dusk. The air carried the faint scent of earth and drying leaves, mingling with the distant hum of crickets beginning their nightly symphony. In this quiet corner of the countryside, life moved at a slower pace, untouched by the chaos of cities and modernity. But on this particular evening, something unusual stirred within the fields, something that would leave an indelible mark on everyone who dared to listen. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? It began with a woman named Emilia, woman who had spent her entire life surrounded by these sprawling acres of corn. She knew the land like the back of her hand, every row, every bend, every hidden corner. But even familiarity couldn't prepare her for what she would encounter that night. Emily had been out late, tending to some final chores before heading back to the farmhouse. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, and the first stars were just beginning to peek through the darkening veil above. As she walked along the edge of the property, her boots crunching softly against the dry soil, she heard Ida sound so faint at first that she thought it might be her imagination. A whisper, almost imperceptible, carried by the breeze. At first, she dismissed it, chalking it up to the rustling of leaves or the creaking of wooden fences in the distance. But then it came again louder this time, unmistakable, voices. They were coming from deep within the cornfield. Emily froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. The voices weren't loud, but they were clear enough to send a shiver down her spine. They spoke in hushed tones, overlapping one another in a chaotic jumble of words she couldn't quite make out. There was no mistaking it. They were human voices, yet they sounded strange, distorted as if filtered through layers of static. She glanced around, searching for any sign of movement, but the field stood silent and still, save for the gentle sway of the cornstalks. Curiosity battled with fear inside her. Part of her wanted to turn and run to retreat to the safety of the farmhouse and pretend she hadn't heard anything. But another part, the part that had grown up exploring these fields, knowing every inch of them, refused to let her ignore it. Gathering her courage, she stepped into the cornfield, pushing aside the tall stalks as she ventured deeper into the labyrinth of green and gold. The further she went, the more pronounced the voices became. They weren't calling out to her, nor did they seem aware of her presence. Instead, they whispered among themselves, fragments of sentences floating through the air. "Don't look too late, they're watching." The words sent a chill racing down her spine. Each one was more unsettling than the last. She tried to focus, to piece together what they were saying, but the voices shifted and changed, slipping away like smoke before she could grasp their meaning. And then, abruptly, they stopped. The silence that followed was deafening, pressing down on her like a weight. Her breath caught in her throat as she scanned the area, her eyes straining to pierce the growing darkness. That's when she saw Ita's figure standing amidst the stalks, partially obscured by the shadows. It was humanoid in shape, but something about it was wrong. Its posture was unnaturally stiff, its head tilted at an angle that made her stomach churn. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. There was no response. The figure remained motionless, as if carved from stone. Emily took a cautious step forward, her pulse hammering in her ears. Just as she was about to call out again, the figure turned and vanished into the corn, not walking, not running, but vanishing as though it had never been there at all. Panic surged through her veins, and she stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her own feet in her haste to retreat. She didn't stop until she reached the edge of the field, gasping for air as she leaned against the fence. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had just witnessed. Was it a prank? Some kind of elaborate hoax? Or was it something else entirely? When she finally mustered the strength to tell her family about the incident, they listened with a mixture of skepticism and unease. Her father, a grizzled man, with hands calloused from years of labor, dismissed it as nothing more than her imagination playing tricks on her. "You've been working too hard," he said gruffly. "Get some rest and you'll feel better in the morning." But her younger brother, Jake, wasn't so quick to brush it off. He had always been the curious type, the one who loved hearing tales of the strange and unexplained. His eyes lit up as she recounted the story, and he insisted they investigate further the next evening. Armed with flashlights and a sense of determination, Emily and Jake ventured back into the cornfield. The atmosphere felt different this time, heavier, charged with an almost electric tension. The usual sounds of the countryside, the chirping of crickets, the rustle of leaves were absent, replaced by an oppressive silence. As they moved deeper into the field, the whispers returned, faint at first, but growing louder with each step. Jake gripped Emily's arm, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you hear that?" She nodded, unable to speak. The voices were clearer now, more insistent, as if urging them forward. Against her better judgment, Emily led the way, following the sound deeper into the heart of the cornfield. What they found there defied explanation. In a small clearing surrounded by towering stalks, stood a circle of stones arranged in a crude pattern. The ground within the circle was scorched black, as though it had been burned, though there was no smell of smoke or ash. Etched into the largest stone was a single word, carved deeply into the surface. "Listen." Before either of them could react, the voices erupted into a cacophony of sound overwhelming and disorienting. Emily and Jake clutched each other, their flashlights flickering wildly as the world around them seemed to warp and twist. Shadows danced at the edges of their vision, fleeting glimpses of figures moving just beyond the light. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the noise ceased, leaving them alone once more. Shaken, but alive, they fled the field, vowing never to return. But the experience left its mark on them, lingering in their thoughts long after the initial shock had faded. The whispers followed them, faint echoes that crept into their dreams and haunted their waking hours. No matter how far they ran, the voices in the cornfield refused to let them go. Years passed, and the story of the mysterious voices spread throughout the community, whispered in hushed tones over kitchen tables and campfires. Some claimed to have seen strange lights hovering above the fields at night, while others reported hearing disembodied cries carried on the wind. The cornfield became a place of legend, avoided by most and feared by all. Yet, despite the warnings, people continued to venture into the field, drawn by morbid curiosity or a desire to uncover the truth. None ever returned unchanged, their faces pale and haunted, their eyes hollow with secrets they refused to share. The voices, it seemed, had a way of finding those who sought them out, pulling them into their web of mystery and madness. And so the legend lives on a chilling reminder of the unknown forces that lurk just beyond the edge of our understanding. The cornfield remains silent and watchful, waiting for its next visitor to heed the call of the voices within. The vanishing of hiker Jane. The sun was setting over Usede National Park, casting long shadows across the towering granite cliffs and painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The air carried a crispness that signaled the approach of autumn, yet the warmth of the day still lingered in the valley below. It was late afternoon when Jane Carter, a 34-year-old avid hiker from Sacramento, decided to take one last detour on her favorite trail. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? Jane had spent the entire day exploring the Tuolumne Meadows area, a place she'd visited countless times before. Her familiarity with the terrain made her feel at ease as she wandered further than usual, drawn by the promise of solitude and breathtaking views. She wore her trusty hiking boots, a weathered backpack slung over her shoulders, and carried only the essentials: water, snacks, a map, and her phone. Little did she know, this seemingly ordinary outing would become the subject of intense speculation and debate among enthusiasts of the missing 411 phenomenon. As she ventured deeper into the forest, the sounds of civilization faded away. The rustling leaves, the distant call of birds, and the gentle flow of streams created an almost meditative atmosphere. Jane paused occasionally to snap photos with her camera, capturing the beauty of the landscape around her. Time seemed to slip away unnoticed us. She became fully immersed in nature's splendor. It was around 5:30 p.m. when Jane reached a particularly scenic overlook near Cloud's Rest. The view stretched endlessly before her a panorama of jagged peaks, lush valleys, and shimmering lakes. As she stood there, taking it all in, something peculiar happened. Her phone began acting strangely. First, the signal disappeared entirely, despite being in an area where reception usually remained strong. Then, the battery drained rapidly, dropping from 70% to completely dead within minutes. Perplexed, but not overly concerned, Jane tucked her useless device back into her pack. Nightfall approached faster than expected. The temperature dropped sharply, and the once bright surroundings grew dimmer with each passing moment. Jane realized she needed to head back toward her campsite, located near Tenaya Lake. However, as she turned to retrace her steps, a wave of disorientation washed over her. The familiar landmarks she relied on were nowhere to be seen. Panic started creeping in us. She wandered aimlessly through the thickening darkness. Back at the campground, Jane's absence went unnoticed initially. Friends assumed she'd chosen to extend her hike, or perhaps decided to sleep under the stars somewhere along the trail. But as hours passed without any sign of her return, concern mounted. By morning, search parties were organized, consisting of park rangers, volunteers, and specially trained dogs. They combed through every inch of the area where Jane was last known to have been. Days turned into weeks. Despite extensive efforts, including aerial searches, ground teams, and even psychic mediums brought in by desperate family members, no trace of Jane Carter emerged. What made her case even more baffling was the complete lack of evidence suggesting foul play or accident. There were no signs of struggle, no abandoned belongings, nothing indicating distress. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Word about Jane's disappearance spread quickly throughout the hiking community and beyond. People familiar with the missing 411 theory couldn't help but draw parallels between her case and others documented across North America. In these mysterious incidents, individuals, often children or young adults, inexplicably go missing in national parks and wilderness areas. Common threads include strange behavior prior to vanishing, equipment malfunctions, sudden changes in weather conditions, and unexplained electromagnetic anomalies. Meanwhile, Jane's loved ones struggled to come to terms with what had happened. Her younger brother, Michaela's software engineer living in San Francisco, threw himself into researching similar cases. He scoured online forums, interviewed fellow hikers who'd experienced unexplainable phenomena, and corresponded with authors specializing in paranormal investigations. Through his efforts, he uncovered disturbing patterns linking various disappearances geographically and temporally. Months later, another incident occurred just miles away from where Jane went missing. This time, it was a father and son camping near Merced River. During their evening meal, they claimed seeing lights dancing erratically above the treetops, lights resembling fireflies, but much larger and brighter. When they attempted to investigate further, both men reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, causing them to retreat hastily to their tent. Upon reviewing footage captured by their dashboard camera earlier that day, they noticed strange figures moving in the background of otherwise empty landscapes. These developments reignited interest in Jane's case. Investigators revisited old leads, analyzed new information, and expanded their search radius. Yet, despite growing public awareness and increased resources allocated towards solving such mysteries, answers remained elusive. Some theorized extraterrestrial involvement, pointing to alleged UFO sightings recorded near Ucede over decades. Others suggested dimensional portals might exist within certain geographic coordinates, explaining how people could enter yet never exit. For Michael Carter, however, speculation wasn't enough. He continued searching tirelessly for concrete clues regarding his sister's fate. Along the way, he encountered other families affected by similar tragedies. Together, they formed a support network sharing experiences, resources, and hopes for resolution. While skepticism abounded among mainstream media outlets and law enforcement agencies, these individuals found solace knowing they weren't alone in confronting questions science couldn't yet answer. Years passed. Seasons changed repeatedly over Usaid's majestic landscapes. And though official records listed Jane Carter as missing, presumed deceased, those closest to her held on to faith that someday, somehow, the truth would emerge. Until then, her story served as a haunting reminder of the vast unknowns lurking within our natural world. A testament to how easily we can lose ourselves amidst its grandeur, whether physically, spiritually, or perhaps in ways we're only beginning to comprehend.